The much anticipated YFull update has happened in 2022. It's version 10.00.00. Today I updated my systems that use the YFull geolocated samples and the YFull tree with the most recent common ancestor estimates. And this is the first time I'm making a video where I talk about the interesting things that are new, either new samples from underrepresented regions or new functionality that I've developed or just anything interesting. And yeah, I'll try to do a video each time if people like it. There are 45 new regions represented on the YFull tree for the first time ever. Before I run down them, I want to show some quick tips. If you're looking at a computed migration on Phylogeography, theoretical computed migration, I should add, it tells you the version of YFull that the theoretical migration path was computed on. You can click release notes. If you do that, it will bring you to this page that I create each month or whenever YFull updates that has some statistics, shows the new samples, and just a few notes. I've been doing this each month, making a page that you can look at. And there's some links, some useful links to the Y heat map. This is a screenshot of the diversity map showing you that there's an animation function. I want to show how you use that. A researcher in haplogroup Q recently contacted me, actually yesterday he did, and he said, I'm interested to discuss with you the origin of a lineage of Q called QY4827. So if we look at QY4827, from looking at the samples on the YFull tree, if you spend enough time to look at them, there's so many from Scandinavia, and if you look at the age of the branching points and almost exclusive presence in Scandinavia back to ancestors that lived 2,900 years ago, then you would already have a theory without having visualized this on a map, without having looked up, well, it's Sweden, but it's more specifically Västra Götalands region. Or this one is SES, Värmlandsen. Okay, I don't know where Nordland is in Norway, and I don't know where Telemark is in Norway, but I don't have to know because my software knows. And let's see what the diversity map looks like for this lineage. Was 48? I forgot what it was. 4827. 4827. Okay, this is it starts out with a default diversity being shown that is very low. I mean, there's a spectrum. There's a scale. Oh, I made the window too small and you can't see the scale. There's the legend. Blue is highest diversity. Yellow is lowest diversity. Green is in the middle. You can click play and it will incrementally increase the diversity. And you can see that this haplogroup has so much diversity, almost exclusively in Scandinavia from an early time from 2,900 years ago. So even though there's no ancient samples yet found, this is the most likely origin, is Scandinavia 2,900 years ago. So you can just enter any branch and it will compute and show you the diversity, and you can click this play button to go back in time, hit rewind, and then hit play again, and you can see it gradually increase the diversity. Useful tool for your analytical tool belt, and it's free. Okay, now about the new regional codes. We have the first sample representing the country of Martinique. There he is, Martinique. Interesting flag. I've never seen it before. I don't know what there's a little white thing inside of the flag. It's most recent common ancestor with all these guys that are from the British Isles lived 2,000 years ago. So I dubbed the British Islander. Maybe this would be a time to insert an ad for that company that sells you like 5 square feet of property in Scotland so that you can be a lord. Because a lot of people are into that. We have our first regional code from Laos. LAHO, Huapan. It's a scientific sample, LA364. The capital of Huapan province is Samnua, one of the country's least visited provincial capitals by Western tourists. But I went there. It was on a brief trip through Laos to Vietnam with a college buddy. Okay, here's Huapan province. It's the northeast part of Laos on the border of Vietnam. Samnua is in the middle. I like this photo. It's pretty cool. The Lao alphabet, it's related to the Thai alphabet, but it's cool in its own way. I don't know. It seems like a little more squigglier to me. I can read Thai, and if you can read Thai, you can basically read Lao. It's not that different, and there's just a few. There's some pronunciation sounds. There's some consonant shifts, um, so you can actually understand some Lao if they speak clearly. So I looked at the YFull tree of this branch, and the interesting thing, it's O that a lot of us associate with East Asia. Um, but the weird thing is, look at the diversity here. Oh, this is an ancient sample, by the way. It's cool that the first regional specificity sample from Lao is an ancient sample from 800 BC. That's pretty cool. Uh, but if you look at the diversity, all these samples that are basal are okay. There's an Indonesian, but then there's 3 guys from Bangladesh or India. This part of India, Tripura, is right next to Bangladesh. So there's a really interestingly high diversity in in Bangladesh, and this is a speaker of a Dravidian language on the southeastern coast, Konda Dora of India. But all these other guys are Southeast Asians. And if you go up the line, back one branch up, he has a sibling that is like almost exclusively from Singapore. It's pretty cool. From 5,000 years ago. Really high diversity in Singapore. And then sibling to that, they're only found in China, just from scientific samples. One from Sichuan, the other is a Dai speaker. Dai is a language related to Thai. And they linguists theorize that the Thai speakers came from southern China, and Thai Kadai is the language family. And then another guy from Yunnan. So this is really a Southeast Asian deeper origin, this branch. I double checked on the Dai language. I think the Dai language is a name of the language spoken in Yunnan, China. It's one of the Tai Kadai languages. This is from the Wikipedia page. I had no idea that of the Tai Kadai languages that there's 2 different Tai Kadai languages spoken on the island of Hainan. It's really cool. See, all the greatest diversity of Tai Kadai languages is in southern China, and only one group migrated through Laos and into Thailand, and it was not that long ago that migration took place, and it's really interesting. They have some movies about some of the first Thai kings. The languages that were spoken in Southeast Asia before the Thai speakers moved in were called the Austroasiatic language family. And now you see that big swaths of it are are no longer being spoken and hardly spoken in Burma or Thailand. But Khmer and Vietnam are two countries where their national language is an Austroasiatic language. Mon Khmer is just one branch of Austroasiatic. Another branch of it is Munda, spoken in India. We could definitely figure out which are the male lines that the Thai speakers carried with them as they migrated through Laos and into Thailand through the river valleys. Could definitely figure this out if there were more than 3 people from Thailand and more than 1 person from Laos. They don't even have a single living person from Laos who's done a test. If more of these people do tests, we could definitely figure out like what could be the male line haplogroup of these Thai kings from 1,000 years ago. It'd be really interesting to know. Okay, this is going to take a long time if I spend so much time on each of these new regional codes. Biggest growth, Slovenia. It used to have 17 different regions represented. Now it's 22, 5 new regions. The total number of samples for Slovenia increased a lot from 29 to 38. It's like a 33% chance increase. It's a lot. Of them, the sample from Vrhnica is a sample I helped fund a WGS 400 test at YSeek with money donated to my J2b-L283 research project fund. He's J2b-Z631 basal. WGS tests, stands for whole genome sequence tests, can find mutations in parts of the Y chromosome not covered by big Y tests. So I'm hoping to uncover more branching points through the WGS testing, especially for lineages like this one that rapidly proliferated. Like it has 5 or 6 branching points defined by only 1 SNP. So every SNP counts. If we can find more SNPs by covering the entire Y chromosome, then we're going to have a more accurate phylogeny. Brits have been industrious, also gaining 5 new regional codes. But some of them are UK regional codes for places that were already represented with other codes, like Wales and Edinburgh. The French have gotten off their derrieres and added 2 new regional codes to the YFull YTree, both in eastern France. Du, or Doubs, I don't know how you pronounce it. There's some exceptions in French pronunciation. And Alpes de Haute-Provence. Doubs, I'll just pronounce it like an idiot, is a nebula sample. If you want him to stay on the YFull tree, you should contact him through the YFull messaging system and try to convince him why he should pay for his samples analysis or offer to pay it yourself. If he replies giving you consent to pay, you can forward that to order@yfull.com and they'll send you a payment link. Italians have added 2 regions, Siena and Mantova, both in northern Italy. Romania has added 2 more regions, Bihor and Ialomita. This is one of the least sampled countries in Europe per capita. Bihor is on the border with Hungary and Ialomita is just northeast of Bucharest. Spain is an interesting case. They have a very large diaspora. Oh, there's no new regional code from Spain, but this is just some interesting observation. Spain is an interesting case. They have a very large diaspora in the New World that dwarfs the population of the home country, which is used to calculate these per capita sampling rates from that map that I showed you earlier. However, in spite of this, they have one of the lower sampling rates in Europe per capita. I think it's due to a combination of low sampling rate among people living in Spain now, and the fact that descendants of Spanish colonists in the New World are either also undersampled or and or cannot reliably trace descent to Spain. After all, they were the first Europeans, after the Vikings, who either died out or were bred out, to colonize the New World. So a lot of them came to the New World so long ago that they just do not have a paper trail going all the way back to the Old World. Their neighbors in Portugal have 4 times the Spanish per capita sampling rate. This figure is just counting the country flags on YFull and dividing by that country's 1960 population. Okay, we're going to move to Spain to see what I was talking about. Relative to average, 0.966. Relative to average in Portugal, 3.862. It's 4 times per capita. Now, there's diaspora effects that was too complicated. I didn't really know how to factor that in. So it's just computed based on the country population. We got a new region from Turkey. Jorum splits the subclade of my brother-in-law, Givi-Tutskaridze, who's from Imereti, near Ciatura. Here's Jorum, just south of the Black Sea, but it's kind of far away from Georgia. These guys are really interesting, his line. There aren't a whole lot of people, this is a branch of J1, there aren't a whole lot of people that are alive who have tested who are positive for this line. And they're not from the same places. They're all from all over the place. And Gibi's closest mainline relative is a guy from Kazakhstan. Their common ancestor lived around 600 BCE. This guy from Turkey is their next closest relative. Their common ancestor lived at the late Bronze Age. And then there's an Armenian guy from Şanlıurfa, Turkey, and a Saudi in their sibling branch. And then the sibling branch of that branch has an Egyptian and a Saudi. And then these guys' next closest relative is a Basque. And their common ancestor lived about 6,000 years ago. So, God, I wish I could tell him something, but it's just too geographically disparate for me to really say anything. An improvement in this update that I've made is for 5 countries that have large provinces, I have added the area. I've taken the areas into consideration, which requires me looking up and manually entering the area of each of their states, so that the heat map will make a larger radius, but at a lower intensity commensurate with that radius, so that bigger area is covered, and instead of just having a pinprick over a very large state or regional code. And I did this for Australia, which has huge regions. Sorry it took so long, Australians. Afghanistan, Iraq, Norway, and Sweden. And I'll show you here with the West and South Asian brother branch of my European JL283. It's called Z2432. It's a line of J2b. Let's look at the diversity heat map. Okay, why don't I zoom in? It'll look better. We don't need to look at the whole world for this. This is just a West Asian and South Asian. Oh, and there's Central Asian guys too that just didn't do a test. Do the animation. This guy from Anbar, he's getting a bigger radius than he would have in the past, and so this smooths out the heat map over this region, because there's also guys from Syria and Anatolia, and so this improves the way the map looks, and it makes it more informative. This is a iterative process where every update I add a few different countries that have large regions. I take their areas into account. I want to share now a really cool map that I made today that I hope will inspire you to keep on doing your research. Another researcher in J2b-L283 has a Google map of ancient samples that he's tracking, Flor Vesely. So thanks to him doing that, I took a screenshot of just the Western Balkans because recently we had a lot of samples dropped from some scientific studies, samples in Slovenia, Croatia, and Hungary. And I put some notes on here and I grouped them by color according to which branch of the tree the different samples were classified as, and found some interesting things. The most interesting thing is that we can say that the branch Y86930 that's in pink, these samples with this pink circle, they have on the YFull tree estimated most recent common ancestor lived 800 BCE. And all the guys so far, all the guys so far found are in this 5 samples are found in the area that the tribe that lived in the 5th century BCE was known as the Iapodes. So already and these samples are like 600 BCE, 500 BCE. It's very likely that this male line participated in the founding of this tribe or was among one of the founding families. So that's pretty cool. And there's a lot of people that told me a year ago and try to discourage people from trying to do specific regional analysis of samples. Take advantage of the YFull tree, take it using regional sampling codes, regional codes, put the ancient samples on the tree, show where the ancient samples are. You can get it. You can do an analysis like this, and we actually can say these guys probably were Iapodes. Other branches here, we're going to need more ancient samples to be found before we can figure out something like that. Oh, and that guy here is this little hexagon to the southeast in Bosnia is a Croatian-speaking guy today. But look, he didn't move very far from where his ancient ancestors have been living. It's really badass. It's the dream of what we've been trying to do, and we're tasting it a little bit. First tastes. Well, this guy, this light blue circle up at the top, is a Celticized. This is from 300 BC. It's just one guy. It's a Celticized culture, Latin, because it's only 300 BCE. But since all the other ancient samples are from further south so far, we think that this guy was an indigenous person living right there. This is Vas County, Hungary, on the border between what are now Austria and Hungary. We think he was just like an indigenous guy, and his culture, his tribes got Celticized, and he stuck around. But yeah, we'll see. You know, as we get more data, we got to adjust our theories. And if you're just getting into this now, it's great if whatever haplogroup you're interested in, probably your own, but even if you're just getting into this now, as long as you can think logically, it doesn't matter that you're just getting into it now. You're probably better off than people who have been into this for the last 10 years because you're not going to have a bunch of preconceived notions based on low resolution data that cloud your judgment and point you to a direction that nobody would ever consider, looking at the full scope of the high resolution data that we have now and looking at the ancient samples. There's a lot of people that are like just trying to always prove some idea that they had 10 years ago. And it's better if new blood comes in that's not stained by these static and possibly usually wrong ideas that are old and just persist. So yeah, do it. It's I have some tutorials on my website, Phylogeographer. There's a tutorial page if you want to get up to speed. phylogeographer.com. Click on this tutorials thing and it will bring you to this page. That's me. So I have a bunch of things. You can just go sequentially or just watch the one that's more interesting for you. I promise you that you'll learn stuff. I try to be as practical as possible. Just teach useful ideas in as simple a way as I can. I was a math teacher once to non-native English speakers, and so I think I can teach pretty well. Uh, if I could do this kind of stuff to as a consultant for $50 an hour, if you want to contact me to advance research into your male line origins. I have some experience with autosomal um, analysis, or like figuring out who are the guys related to you, how can we find a Y DNA potential tester, strategies for that. But really, my expertise is with interpreting the DNA results of the Y chromosome and figuring out stuff like this, like looking at where they're from, the guys living today, looking at the ancient samples, looking at historical processes we know, looking at how old the branching points are, putting it together and uh, get learn about your ancient ancestors, who they may have been or probably were. Just depends. Some people have more easily provable uh, theories, corroborated theories. Some don't. Only one way to find out. You can email me, hunterproven@gmail.com. Thanks. If you'd like to support my work and check out the services I offer on Patreon, Phylogeographer on Patreon. I have a mapping service and a service where I provide some kind of analysis with maps.